Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu says the Taliban have taken control of Afghanistan's border with Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. In an interview, Shoigu said the Taliban leaders have promised not to attack the neighboring countries. This comes after the group claimed to have completely captured the two provinces of Dakhshan and Baghlan. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden urged the Afghan leaders to come together and fight for their nation. Iraqi Foreign Minister Dr. Fuad Hussain says the Kashmir dispute must be resolved through dialogue. He was addressing a press conference along with his Pakistani counterpart Shah Mahmood Qureshi in Islamabad. On his part, Qureshi said the two sides also discussed the Afghan peace process. In Algeria, 65 people, including soldiers, have died in wildfires that erupted in east of the capital, Algiers. Prime Minister Ahmed bin Abdurrahmane says the government has asked for help from the international community. He said they are also in talks with partners to hire planes to extinguish fires. Brazil has reported over 1,200 deaths and more than 34,000 infections overnight. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 81 more people have lost their lives to the virus, while nearly 4,800 tested positive in the last 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4.3 million lives and infected over 204 million people so far. And in the Kashmir Premier League, Rawalakot Hawks beat Bagh Stallions by 5 wickets in 10th fixture of the mega event. They comfortably chased down the target of 157 runs with 10 balls to spare, thanks to Kashif Ali's 50. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu says the Taliban have taken control of Afghanistan's border with Uzbekistan and Tajikistan.
In an interview, Shoigu says the Taliban leaders have promised not to attack the neighboring countries. This comes after the group claimed to have completely captured the two provinces of Badakhshan and Baghlan. While Afghan officials said the security forces have retaken control of Farah, the capital of the eponymous province. Earlier, Afghan soldiers who retreated to an airport in the captured Kunduz city surrendered to the Taliban with all their weapons. Meanwhile, President Ashraf Ghani has met Marshal Abdul Rashid Dostum to discuss the security situation in the north. Talking to the media, Marshal Dostum said the Taliban have no way to escape and they will be crushed. Moreover, Pakistan, China, Russia, and the United States are set to meet in Doha today to further exchange views on the issue.
Russia says it will regularly conduct drills with its Central Asian allies near the Afghan border. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu says the practice will help to ensure the security preparations in case of a potential attack. Shoigu said the hasty withdrawal of the foreign troops from Afghanistan triggered a swift degradation of the situation. He warned of the rise of terrorists and a surge in their activity. The Russian defense minister said this situation requires taking appropriate measures. The remarks came as Russia completed joint exercises on Afghan border along with Tajik and Uzbek troops. More stories to follow, but right after a short break, stay tuned. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has appreciated Turkey's strong and consistent support on the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. He was in a meeting with Turkey's Defense Minister Hulusi Akar in Islamabad. The Prime Minister's office said he reiterated that Pakistan will continue to make every effort to help advance the Afghan peace process. Khan also underlined the importance of an inclusive, broad-based and comprehensive Afghan settlement. The Prime Minister also expressed deep concern over the forest fires in Turkey and offered assistance to Ankara. Earlier, the visiting dignitary called on Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa to discuss the Afghan peace process. Iraq's Foreign Minister Fawad Hussain says the Kashmir dispute must be resolved through dialogue. He was addressing a press conference along with his Pakistani counterpart Shah Mahmood Qureshi in Islamabad. He went on to say that the situation in Afghanistan is a cause for concern due to rampant violence to resolve the conflict. The minister also acknowledged Pakistan's positive role in the Afghan peace process. On his part, Qureshi said Pakistan will continue to facilitate a peaceful Afghanistan despite the negative statements emanating from some quarters within Afghanistan. The United States and Germany has called on China to immediately release a Canadian businessman sentenced to 11 years for espionage. Michael Sapwar has been detained since 2018 after being arrested with fellow Canadian ex-diplomat Michael Kovrig. The verdict will test a strained relationship between the Canadian and Chinese governments. It comes as an extradition battle involving Meng Wanzhou, a senior executive at Chinese tech giant Huawei, takes place in Canada. Meanwhile, China has urged the European Union to earnestly respect the spirit of the rule of law and the country's judicial sovereignty. This comes after the EU External Action Service expressed concern over the death penalty verdict for a convicted Canadian drug smuggler. The Chinese mission to the EU termed the statement a reckless interference in China's internal affairs. A spokesperson for the mission called on the body to stop making irresponsible remarks. In a statement, he said every country takes a hard line on drug-related crimes. The spokesperson added the death sentence for the crimes will help deter and prevent such menaces. Israel's Foreign Minister Yair Lapid has begun a visit to Morocco, the first by Israel's top diplomat since an upgrading of ties under a U.S. brokered deal. Leading a ministerial delegation on a two-day visit, Lapid will inaugurate Israel's diplomatic mission in Rabat. Morocco was one of 4 Arab countries, along with the UAE, Bahrain and Sudan, to move towards normalizing relations with Israel last year. The agreements angered Palestinians seeking to have an independent state in the Israeli-occupied territory. Now, Brazil has reported over 1,200 deaths and more than 34,000 infections overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4.3 million lives and infected over 204 million people so far. More in this report.
The recent surge of COVID-19 driven by the Indian Delta variant has worsened the global coronavirus vaccine divide. The World Health Organization has urged the 20 most powerful nations to overturn the disgraceful global imbalance in access to vaccines. China says it has sent some 770 million doses of vaccines to over 100 countries and organizations, ranking first in the world in terms of vaccine donations. The United Kingdom is preparing to offer COVID-19 booster jabs in the country from the next month. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Angela Merkel says her country's vaccination drive is not satisfactory.
Jetzt haben wir genug Impfstoff.
We now have enough vaccines and we must lobby so that people can get vaccinated. On an European scale, we are no longer at the top. There is a number of countries which do better and which are more vaccination friendly. As of today, 55.1% of the population is fully vaccinated and 62.5% have been vaccinated once.
The Delta variant is now wreaking havoc in the Oceania. New Zealand has designated Indonesia and Fiji as very high-risk countries due to the escalating COVID-19 case numbers. Australia has also extended lockdown in its second biggest city of Melbourne for a second week amid surging Delta cases. Meanwhile, South Korea continues to grapple with its worst outbreak to date due to the Delta variant and reported record new daily cases.
With the recent spread of the more transmissible Delta virus, the number of confirmed cases is increasing, showing mass infection cases from workplace, indoor sports facilities, churches, and nursing hospitals. Along with that, the rate of investigating the path of infection is also rising, which means silent spreaders within communities are increasing.
In Thailand, police fired tear gas and rubber bullets at protesters calling for the government to resign over its handling of the pandemic. Meanwhile, in the U.S. state of Louisiana, hospitals are struggling to keep up with a huge surge in COVID-19 patients, also fueled by the Delta variant.
Pakistan has reported 81 deaths from coronavirus in the past 24 hours, raising the toll to 24,085. The health ministry says over 4,800 people tested positive overnight and the positivity rate was 7.5. Pakistan has so far reported over 1,080,000 cases. The ministry says more than 972,000 people have recovered from the disease. It noted over 39 million doses of the vaccine have been administered to date. Pakistan is observing National Minority Day to commemorate the contribution of minorities to the progress of the country. In a historic speech on this day in 1947, Quaid-e-Azam pledged to protect minorities' rights in the newly created country. Muhammad Ali Jinnah said the state has no business to be interfering in an individual's religious, caste or creed. Events, seminars and social gatherings are arranged across the country by members of various religious minorities. In their messages, President Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan promised protection of all rights of minorities living in Pakistan. Alvi said the government has been making consistent efforts for the welfare and the facilitation of minorities. Khan noted that the government has empowered the Minorities Commission to play its mandated role in an effective manner. North Korea says the US and South Korea are risking a huge security crisis by choosing to escalate tensions. This comes a day after Supreme Leader's sister Kim Yo-jong warned Seoul and Washington over annual joint military drills. A top Workers' Party official, Kim Yo-chol, said the two responded to Pyongyang's goodwill with hostile acts. In a statement, Kim said South Korea defied the opportunity to make a turn in relations. He warned that Seoul will pay dearly for choosing its alliance with the US over peace between the Koreas. Meanwhile, Pyongyang refused to answer South Korea's hotline calls for the second consecutive day. In Myanmar, at least 3 people have died after reportedly jumping from an apartment to escape a security forces raid. Several others have been critically injured in the incident that occurred in Yangon's Botatong district. The UN Special Envoy on Myanmar, Christine Schreiner-Bergner, has warned of a full-scale civil war in the country. She said the military ruler Min Aung Hlaing appears determined to solidify his grip on power after taking on the Prime Minister's role. Meanwhile, Myanmar's foreign minister says China will provide $6 million to fund development projects in the country. Earlier, Washington announced a $50 million aid for COVID relief. The Sudanese foreign minister says the country will hand long-time autocrat Omar al-Bashir to the International Criminal Court over the Darfur conflict. According to the UN, nearly 300,000 people were killed and 2.5 million displaced in the 6-year-long conflict which erupted in 2003. Sudan's state media quoted Mariam al-Mahdi as saying that the cabinet had decided to hand over Bashir and other wanted officials to the court. Bashir is facing charges of genocide, war crimes and crimes against humanity in Darfur. He ruled Sudan for 3 decades before being deposed in 2019. Amnesty International says the Ethiopian government forces have been sexually abusing women and girls in restive Tigray region. The watchdog says it interviewed medical professionals, humanitarian workers and 63 survivors of sexual violence. In its report, the Amnesty said the survivors had been gang raped while held captive for weeks. 28 survivors identified Eritrean forces as the sole perpetrators of rape. The amnesty said sexual violence has been used as a weapon of war to inflict lasting physical and psychological damage. It said these occurrences constitute war crimes and may also amount to crimes against humanity. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In the U.S., New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo has resigned after an inquiry found that he sexually harassed 11 women, but he denies any wrongdoing. The Democrat has faced pressure from his own party to resign since last week, including from President Joe Biden. In a televised address, Cuomo said the resignation goes into effect in 14 days. Cuomo said he accepts full responsibility for what he characterized as ill-conceived attempts to be affectionate or humorous. Power will now be transferred to Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul, who will be the first woman to lead New York. Joe Biden welcomed the governor's announcement, saying he respects Cuomo's decision. The U.S. Senate has passed a $1 trillion infrastructure bill, marking a big step towards President Joe Biden's domestic agenda. 69 members of the chamber voted in favor of the bill, while 30 against it. The bill will provide the nation's biggest investment in decades in roads, bridges, airports, and waterways. Under the budget plan, Senate committees will have top-line spending levels for a wide range of federal initiatives. Biden touted the bill as transformational, saying the deal proves that democracy can still work.
For the Republicans who supported this bill, you showed a lot of courage. And I want to personally thank you for that. And I've called most of you on the phone to do just that. You have, and no doubt you will, disagree with me on many issues. But where we can agree, we should. And here on this bill, we prove that we can still come together to do big things, important things for the American people.
65 people, including soldiers, have died in Algeria amid wildfires that erupted in the east of the capital, Algiers. Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahmane says the government has sought help from the international community. More in this report.
Death, destruction, and despair trail the tracks of the wildfires that are raging in various locations across the world. Algeria's defense ministry says several soldiers have been badly injured with burns. Dozens of fires started in the Kabylie region near Algiers and elsewhere, burning houses and trees and killing cattle. Meanwhile, the European Union says it is mobilizing one of Europe's biggest ever common firefighting operations to help the affected countries. This comes as Greece struggles with wildfires ravaging the island of Evia. Meanwhile, Turkey has contained as many as 274 forest fires, while one continues to burn in the Aegean province of Mugula. Over in Peru, the Air Force is called to help battle the wildfires in the country's Cusco region.
We are trying to manage and control the fire. Why? Because as you can see from the helicopter, the fire is very big. So what we want to do and what we are doing is more than just putting it out. It is about controlling so that it doesn't extend further through the area of Lucre.
In Bolivia, wildfires are sweeping across the country's eastern lowlands. They have burned through over 100,000 hectares of forest in the department of Santa Cruz. Attempts to curb the flames have been unsuccessful amid strong winds.
The fire has given us no respite. We have been trying to stop the fire for 4 or 5 days and the weather changes are playing tricks on us. We are coordinating with the police and other institutions to reduce the traffic on the road until the intensity of the fires decreases. Those of us who are here can feel the high temperature and it is oppressive. We will continue fighting for our Chiquitania.
In the United States, the Dixie Fire burning in Northern California has charged some 500,000 acres, making it the second largest wildfire in state history. Temperatures have risen across the Pacific Northwest as residents of Portland, Oregon and Washington prepare for a third heat wave. Meanwhile, in Canada, the White Rock Lake fire continued to smolder in British Columbia.
In Chile, a decade-long drought in the capital Santiago has gone from bad to worse due to a scorching July. Officials say that such happenings at the time of the year when the city is usually in rain and snow are clear evidence of global warming. More in this report.
A lack of precipitation this year has left the towering and typically snow-capped Andes above Santiago mostly bare, reservoir levels low and farm fields parched. The city's central weather station recorded just 78 millimeters of rainfall so far this year. It is drastically less than last year's 180 millimeters and an average amount of 252 millimeters.
We are facing the worst hydrological crisis, the worst drought in our history. We are in the 13th year of drought. We have never had more than 4 consecutive years before. This has been the driest period of Chile's history since the start of the registers.
Some scientists and politicians in Chile are warning of growing and potentially irreversible water shortages in the central region. Officials have warned that 2 rivers, the Mapocho and the Maipo, that provide Santiago with water are drier than they were in 2019, the driest year in the country's entire history.
Much of the effects of climate change in the short term and medium term are irreversible. So unfortunately, it is unlikely that the precipitations in Chile's central area of the 80s and 90s will return. That we will recover that type of climate in regards to the temperatures and of extraordinary precipitation. That's unlikely from here on towards the middle of the century.
In a recent report, the United Nations has warned that extreme heat waves, which not long ago struck once every 50 years, are now to be expected once per decade. It said that droughts and downpours might also be much more frequent.
In Indonesia, university lecturers have developed a robot that delivers food and good wish messages to people in COVID-19 isolation. Details in this report.
This robot is helping Indonesians pass through the testing times of the pandemic by providing food and entertainment to self-isolated COVID-19 patients. It has been assembled from electric household items like pots, pans, and an old television monitor. Renamed the Delta robot after the highly contagious variant of the virus, it has also been modified to spray disinfectants.
With this new Delta variant and the surging number of COVID-19 cases, I decided to turn the robot used for public services into one that sprays disinfectant and delivers food and necessities to residents who are self-isolating. I'm shifting the function to serve only the members of the community who are in need.
The village where the robot operates is in the Surabaya, which is the capital of East Java province and Indonesia's second biggest city. It has been swept up by a devastating second wave of coronavirus infections in the past month.
This robot is only implemented for use in the village, so it is not classified as a high-tech robot. It is quite simple. For the base, a used toy car chassis was used. Then for the power, we used a battery. For the movement, the commands are set through remote controller, and we use an actuator system to create a signal to move the robot.
Indonesia has become the epicenter of Asia's COVID-19 outbreak and recorded more than 3.68 million infections. Meanwhile, the country has suffered 108,000 deaths amid the outbreak.
Now the business updates. European stocks have cautiously risen with investors monitoring COVID-19 developments and key economic data. London's FTSE led the regional gains, advancing nearly 0.5%. FTSE MIB in Italy also rose more than 0.25%. CAC 40 in Paris added close to 0.25%. Frankfurt's DAX and the pan-European stocks 600 hovered just above the flat line. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.